something like that.
It was a bicycle storage room.
Yeah, that was our first office. So we put 2 desks there, and there were rats, and they had issue with, Tim, what's it called?
Plumbing.
With the plumbing, yeah. So it smelled like
Jordan, what's good, man? How you feeling?
I'm good, man. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm very excited about this week's episode. Today we have Tim Collins and Hugo LaPrince, the 2 co-founders and guys that together run Creed Media. Creed Media, incredible company. They help record labels and brands reach youth culture and Gen Z audiences. They're an incredible, innovative, super fast-growing company. Both Tim and Hugo together were featured this year on Forbes 30 Under 30. In under 3 years, they've built Creed from scratch into now it's over 40 employees in their Stockholm headquarters, and have some other people across the world. I think that they truly understand how to build and access Gen Z and youth audiences and youth culture online. I think Tim, prior to founding this, both these guys, Tim had run an Instagram page, Goals of Dancing, which was one of the top Instagram pages in the world for the dance niche. He saw that there was a big opportunity to be working with talent and helping seed music across talent on Musical.ly, which then became TikTok and has now become one of the not so biggest secrets of how all major record labels try and get songs to break. They try and tap into really interesting talent, try and get songs to get going and go viral on TikTok. And a lot of the time they work with Creed in order to make that happen. I think Creed does a good job at not being dogmatic and getting caught up on one specific platform. But we do in this episode speak to general marketing principles. And then if you're really able to dial into different principles, that's timeless, whereas the channels will always change. In the past episode where we had Tim, we definitely got a lot more tactical around how you could think about approaching growth and creating virality on TikTok. So if you want a kind of more tactical primer on TikTok growth and TikTok marketing for musicians, definitely check out the past episode with Tim. But in today's episode with Tim and Hugo, we definitely dive into their approach around building a thriving business within the music industry, both their journey of personal development, their journey of evolving and iterating upon the value proposition, being intentional about culture. There's tons of great lessons in here. Whether you're a marketer, you're building a label, a music industry entrepreneur, an artist, definitely want to take notes on this one. The growth that these guys have been able to have. Both of them are both of them are either 25 or younger, and they run a company that has 40 employees that they grew within 3 years. Super impressive. They're not slowing down anytime fast. And I know I've been talking for a while. So Jordan, what stood out to you?
It's all good, man. It's all good. This was a really, really fun episode. I think, we, in addition to getting in their story, we have a good time. Hopefully you guys get some laughs out of it. But one thing that I took away from it is just how fucking hungry they were. Like they were just a no excuse team. The way that they planned going to LA as often as they did, the way that they were living to really put this business on its legs was just an amazing story to hear. It was inspiring to me. You hear, we interview a lot of OGs. We interview a lot of people who have been in this game for a long time, and we hear these stories of their triumphs, but we don't really hear it as much from people younger than us. And it was so awesome to hear that, because it sounded like they had years of wisdom in this episode. So really excited for people to hear it, not only as people who want to get in that space, but just as entrepreneurs in general. And the way that they networked was even planned. So really excited for everybody to hear this one, because there's just a lot to learn. There's a lot of inspiration that they give. So those are my favorite parts.
For sure. And if you haven't already, big shout out to our partners over at Vydia. I think if you're a label, a manager, thinking about starting a label, an artist, Vydia is an end-to-end music technology platform that provides labels the infrastructure and technology to power their business.
So they offer global and audio video distribution, rights management, publishing, analytics, detail revenue, accounting, marketing, and more. So obviously your distributor has to get your music in places. Well, fortunately, they're a premium partner of the leading digital service providers like Spotify, Apple, TikTok, Vivo, YouTube, and more. So if you're an independent label, music label, that you want to drive community and culture, Vydia provides the back office tech and infrastructure so that you can compete globally.
For sure. And I think even if you want to, it's cool too, because they've actually built this kind of white label software. So if you want to have your own label distribution backend, and want it to be in line with your branding as a label. So that way you can take down Quality Control and Migos and Lil Yachty.
We love them.
You can do that with Vydia.
We love them. We just want y'all to be competitive, and Vydia is the way to do it.
So if you really box your business and you're trying to grow, definitely make sure you hit up vydia.com/MVP. There you have an application page exclusively for Music Business Podcast listeners. If you get accepted, they're going to be able to support you in a lot of different ways to help you grow your business. So that's vydia.com/MVP. Without any further ado, let's get into this week's episode. Tim, Hugo, what's happening, gentlemen? How are you feeling?
Yo.
All good.
It's fun to be back.
That's right. Yeah. We're excited to have you guys. So for starters, I love what you guys are doing. It's been fun getting to collaborate here and there. Can you just start with kind of the inception story of Creed? How did you two meet? How did Creed come together? I think today we're excited about this episode. It'll be fun. We'll dive into marketing tactics and whatnot, but also very curious on kind of the entrepreneurial and leadership and management side of your journey. So we'd love to start at the very beginning.
Absolutely. Hugo, I can
do that.
Sharing your side of the story.
It's a fun two-sided story. So it all started, I think, 4 or 5 years ago when I founded a company called Starflow. That was a tech company. And on that tech company, I needed to get users on board to the platform. So I sort of Googled around. I tried to find ways to do so. And I stumbled upon Gary Vaynerchuk, and Gary spoke about like Musically is the next thing. Like Musically talent will be the biggest celebrities of this generation. So I Googled a bit more. I tried to get in touch with Gary. That's how I met Elliot. But I Googled like Musically stars Sweden. I really wanted to find these people because I found out that, okay, if I'm going to pay them to promote a service, why don't I just start a management company and I help them and they can help me get users? So I Google Musically people, Sweden, and I get a big list of like websites and social media channels. But at the top, there's a gala called Big Buzz Awards. So I click this gala. I see it's a Swedish company that made it. And it's the first gala in Europe to nominate Musically talents as a category. And I click Musically and I get a list of the 10 absolutely biggest ones in Scandinavia. So I just contact everyone. I start calling their mom, writing to them on Facebook, and just really trying to get in touch.
You say you start calling their mom.
Oh yeah, I called their moms. I called everyone.
You want to know the key to get to artists? You call their moms. That's the key.
I called everyone.
People get confused. Don't try to contact the artists. Call their moms.
They get too many DMs. They will never reply. You got to call the mom. The first mom I spoke to, she was a police. She was really offensive. She was like, "Who are you? Go." but the interesting and the fun part of the story is when basically this is where Tim comes in the picture, because the gala that I found was actually run by Tim.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, I was at a management company called At Night Management at the time, which was Avicii and Axl Rose and all the big Swedish EDM boys. I might have mentioned this last time I was on as well. But during my time there, we were stepping a lot into media as well. So even though like our history and our past was coming off the back of, Avicii's success in the music industry, we were stepping more into the media landscape and, the creator economy space, influencers and whatnot. And so Big Buzz Awards was a gala that was on At Night's initiative to highlight and celebrate creative individuals from Sweden specifically. And at that time, it wasn't about who was the biggest influencers per se, but rather who was the most creative and who had the most cultural impact with their content. But then at the time, Musically, was a bit what it was then. And from what we wanted with the nomination of Musically as a category was more to highlight the immense amount of engagement that was on the platform and show like this is a place where the kids are at. This is like where the new generation is focusing a lot of attention. So we had Musical.ly as a category. And during the time that this gala was starting to form, it was a super, super quick project. I think from like idea to execution, it was like 2 months or something, which was pretty insane. It was an event that was going to host, 2,000 people and stuff like that. So, but my idea during the time of, planning everything was like, I started seeing the super potential in these creators. I was like, okay, this is very interesting seeing how they're currently, growing their following, growing their influence in general. So I was like, okay, after this gala, it would make sense to open up a separate roster within the company that's focused on digital talent. And we could, start with Musical.ly just because that's so close with music, since it's a, audio and music centralized platform. So I was like, forming good relationships with all of them. We already started talking about, potentially going to management after the gala, because we, of course, wanted to stay objective in regards to who was nominated and who's not. But so the day when I was supposed to meet everyone to sign a contract or whatever, or at least discuss this management opportunity, no one replied to me and no one showed up. And I was like, okay, this is strange. So I started calling the moms as well. and none of them replied to me except for one. And she was like, yeah, I mean, we thought about this whole, going to US management, but I'm not really sure if you're qualified to be a good management company for my child. And I'm like, okay. I mean, what are you basing it on? Like, yeah, I'm not sure if you're that experienced with this. I mean, have you done this before? I'm like, we built a Vydia. pretty experienced. But they're like, no, we heard from this guy called Hugo Le Prince that we shouldn't trust you. I'm like, who the fuck, first of all, is this guy Hugo Le fucking Prince? And I'm like, this must be a fake. I'm like, this sounds like, someone trying to tell you that you have a relative in whatever country telling you going to give you gold. Like, I thought it was a fake person. Couldn't find anything about him. He was like, I Googled around, he was like 18. I'm like, how is this more experienced than we are? And like no one ended up coming to the meeting, and I went down to grab a cup of coffee with a friend to just talk about the general frustration of the situation. And when I'm sitting there, this was like below our office, I see a bunch of kids, like these kids that we were wanting to potentially sign, coming in to the cafe. And I was like, this is weird, because they told me they were not going to meet with me. And they're all passing me, so they're not coming to me. And they're going to a table across the room where I see this guy in like a Gucci cap, a Metallica t-shirt, and like ripped jeans, handing out agreements in front of them. And everyone's like signing it there and then. So for me, that was like, hey, this motherfucker is stealing my idea in front of me right now. And I hate him so much. So after that, we hated each other for 2 years.
Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah. So that's basically how we got to know each other. But then like fast forward a few years, or like 2 years, we had to do a project together that ended up, with us realizing that, okay, the reason for us not liking each other was basically because we had the same mindset and the same approach to marketing and strategy and business in general. So from there on, we became friends after that project became successful. And from there on, when I left that night and Hugo left Starflow, we got a project with the Swedish actor called Joel Kinnaman, where we brought in Elliot as well, because we wanted his like creative input on things. So for those that didn't hear that before, Elliot is the third co-founder of Creed, together with myself and Hugo. It was basically the project with Joel that, brought the idea of Creed Media being a thing, becoming a reality, basically, because the project was this actor wanted to do a statement for the 2018 election that we had in Sweden. He was sort of feeling uneasy about sort of the political winds in our country, where it was moving very, towards a party that was very like sort of fascist and shit. And he was like, okay, we don't want them to win. So he wanted to do a statement for that. And the video of that statement became one of the most viral videos in Sweden of that year. It had like 5 million unique Swedish viewers or something like that, which is basically half our country. And after that happened, we sort of realized, okay, that, us working under press and stress seems to create really cool synergies. So what happens if we, take this energy and sort of try to put that towards a joint vision or something like that? And that became Creed Media.
Yeah. So we basically sat down and wrote down, I think, like 100 names for what the company were supposed to be called. And then we just searched for domains. And I think there was one that was even cooler than Creed that we tried to get, but there was no domains. So then we found creedmediagroup.com. It had to be a .com domain. So it has to be Creed Media Group. And since we added group to our company, there's so many companies in Sweden popping up calling themselves group. We just did it because it was the .com domain. So that was that. And then we basically took $2,500 each, me and Tim, put that in a corporation, and booked a one-way flight to Los Angeles for a month to essentially be there to knock on doors and get meetings with the record labels. Because at this moment, Tim had the world's biggest dance account on Instagram with like 2 million followers, and Elliot had, of course, his Dunk network. Mm-hmm. Through that, we ultimately got to know everyone who owned big accounts. So our hypothesis from the beginning and our idea was, what if we were to take music, we take a meme, we create a meme or whatever, we put the song behind the meme, and then we distribute it across tens and hundreds of Instagram accounts. So that was basically how Creed started and what we did from the beginning. Mm-hmm. So we went to the US, went to LA, we lived in the shittiest Airbnb. It was like rats and 4 other families. It was horrible.
Jesus. Why is that even on Airbnb? It was like, yo, we got this room with fucking rats in it. Let's Airbnb this shit. we got
so bad. Here. It was so terrible. Like there was like the walls like this thick, and the other neighbors like having parties, and it just sucked. And we lived out of, you guys know what Huel is. It's like a meal. Yes. Yeah. So we had fuel for 4 weeks. Yeah. We had that for 4 weeks. So we couldn't afford food. So we had that for 4 weeks, lost a ton of weight, which is bad for me, good for Tim.
Bro, y'all don't got no family or nothing? Like, goddamn. Nobody can give y'all no money out here living like that. Shit, bro. Yeah. Damn. Ain't nobody, you could ask your mom for 15 minutes. You calling all these moms. You can call your mom. You can hit your mom up. Be like, yo, I need $100 so I'm not my man said he losing weight.
Yeah, I know, Tim. We needed some discounted Shout campaign promos on Instagram stories. Need food, discounted Shout.
Oh, shit. Like, I got no friends, no family, or nothing.
Yeah, I mean, our network in LA at that time was near to none. I mean, for us, it was like, okay, we were there trying to figure this shit out. Ended up with us not getting pretty much any meeting, except for one on the last day, where it was with a friend of mine who was like interning at Capitol Records Towers building, like in the top of the building. So we had our like coffee with her. It was like good vibes, wouldn't lead to shit. But we were like, okay, at least we were there. So we could always say that, we were in LA, had a record label meeting. That was dope. At least our friends in Sweden, they would think it's cool. But then like we're walking out of that meeting, we're like, okay, this trip sucked balls. And Hugo was like, yeah, but we're at the top of the building, so fuck it. And we're just basically pressed every button in the elevator and went out floor by floor, knocking on windows, trying to convince people that we had a meeting booked. And we had one kind woman bring us in to discuss a project or have a meeting with us. And I think it took her like 20 seconds to figure out that we definitely didn't have a meeting booked. But she was like, yeah, I mean, you guys came all this way and everything. So like, here's a project that I'm working that you can have a look at and send me some ideas before the end of the week, and we could potentially do something. So we flew back home to Sweden. We put together like an idea of what a rollout for that campaign could look like, and it ended up with us, being allowed to do that. So we did the project. It went semi-okay, like wasn't bad, wasn't amazing. But I think that at least started a conversation where it's like, okay, these two weird, or mainly two weird Swedish dudes, because Elliot was cool compared to us at that time.
At that time. He said, we cooler than Elliot now.
Yeah.
No. Explode up.
No, I mean, at that time, okay, so at that time, Elliot was cool. Me and Hugo were not.
We're not cool.
now we might be equally as cool, at least. So that's always something. But so, yeah, I mean, and that started everything for us. Like, word of mouth started spreading in the US, and we were starting to get like managements hitting us up. And we were connected with, Visionary Group and like Chris Zaru and Harrison Remler and everyone there. And started looking at like how we could work together on their projects. That opened new doors. And then step by step, we were getting more and more established in the US. I think, we were flying every other week in between Sweden and New York or LA, just to meet with new people and see if there were any opportunities for us to further expand what we were doing.
We found a winning concept, which is basically when we have a meeting, it's always okay. Who can we have drinks with? We can have you, and then maybe you have two friends that we can bring as well. So every meeting was us meeting two new people.
Yeah.
So it became like a ripple effect. The more we were in the US, the more meetings we had, the more people we got to know just from, we can go grab drinks, bring some of your friends.
Yeah.
And that became like our way of building relationships in New York and LA.
Yeah. And I think, also just, people do respect the fact that you're traveling across the world without knowing if you're even going to get a meeting. And people are open to the idea of speaking with you when you're doing that, putting yourself out there in that way. So, I mean, we were fortunate enough to meet with very kind people who, wanted to give us the opportunity to do things. But at the same time, we were constantly reinvesting pretty much everything we were earning back into being able to do those trips. And now, fast forward 2 years, we're almost 40 people now in the company and have had a great 2.5 years so far. We don't have to rely only on fuel anymore, and we don't need to live in shitty Airbnbs or call people's moms.
He's like, I haven't seen a fucking rat in over 2 years.
Speaking of rats, we had rats. Okay, just to do go back in time a bit here. How it all started in terms of office space. So our first office
rats
space,
in the office too.
Yes. So our first office space was an how do you call it? Bicycle storage room? Something like that.
It was a bicycle storage room.
Yeah, that was our first office. So we put 2 desks there, and there were rats, and they had issue with, Tim, what's it called?
Plumbing.
With the plumbing, yeah. So it smelled like shit for 6 months.
Bro, talk about humble beginnings. You guys have defined it during this episode of the podcast. My man said we went to LA, we drank fuel, we lost weight, we had to deal with rats. The first office was it was like y'all was searching out the most shittiest office y'all could find. It was like, bro, it's cheap, whatever, fuck it. These rats
that was everything. Like, how do we save money? How do we save money so that we can hire people fast?
We're like,
that was the number one objective.
We're a team of 10 people, of which 7 are rats.
What are some of those decisions you actually made really early on? Like you just said you wanted to hire people as soon as possible, so you tried not to spend as much money. What were some of those like key decisions that you made early on in order to grow, that you like those sacrifices that you made other than that?
I think one of the first ones is hiring, of course. But in terms of taking decisions, up until I'd say 6 months ago or 8 months ago when we moved into our current office, me and Tim always said that every decision that we make the risk should be that if it doesn't work out, we go bankrupt. So we did that for 1.5 years. Every decision that was a massive one, from hiring senior people, moving to a bigger office, doing things with the team, traveling to certain places, it's always been, if we go here, like our first trip to the US, if we go here and this doesn't work out, we'll probably go bankrupt. And that was the decision all up until now, at least, or 6-8 months ago.
And I think it's come down to, always wanting to feel like, we need to invest ourselves fully in this or else it won't turn out good. And I think when you feel the pressure from bankruptcy, that's a pretty big pressure.
Yeah.
And I think, at the beginning, it was mainly, we had to always, we only had ourselves to sort of, look after. But now that we have a team of, as mentioned, like almost 40 people, now, that has shifted to a different thing. Now it's like, okay, how can we expand with longevity? How can we ensure that everyone, can have a job over a long period of time and build a career and be able to, move from our company to other greater companies in the future, et cetera, et cetera. But I think if you look at, the pivotal or the biggest decisions that came into play and formed us to become what we are today, definitely in the beginning, it was, our first hiring that we did, when we brought in 4 people on the day that we decided to hire people. That was a huge investment where we're like, okay, this is super scary, but hopefully this investment turns out great. And it did. And then the second, I think, big thing for us there was, moving to our first big office. That was super scary as well. Suddenly we had overhead that we hadn't had before. And then, investing in building out tech to, structure within the organization. It's just been a lot of different things that's been big. And then also, bringing in advisors into the board of our company. And in that case, giving away percentage in the company and ownership, stuff like that can fuck it up, but it turned out really good. And we can only say that every decision we made so far has been really, really the right decision, which baffles me to this day.
And the interesting part about that is something I want to tap into on the decision-making side, is that basically no big decisions is made by either me or Tim individually. It's always done together. So how we see ourselves and how we see what we really made clear in the past 3 months, I'd say, is that we could never do this individually. It would be technically impossible to do that. Maybe as a small scale. But now what we've seen is that as of Tim is, I'd say, one of the best people I've ever known to finish stuff and perfect it, make it really, really, really great. But I'm horrible at that. I cannot finish anything. I'm the worst at that. But I'm really fast at starting stuff, and I can start a lot of stuff. So I have the ADHD, and Tim has the perfectionist brain. So together, I can call Tim on a Sunday, we go to London tomorrow morning. He's like, let's speak about this tomorrow. We speak about it tomorrow. Tim says, I think it's better to be at the office. I'm like, yeah, I think it's better to be at the office. So I'm always in motion. And Tim is always the person that you can lean towards to sort of think a bit more, not only do.
Yeah,
and
I think that's in every decision.
I think one of the biggest learnings from us, at least in the way that we've created our company and been leading our company, is definitely coming back to what Hugo just talked about. That was not doing it alone. I think that's been one of the most important things. It's, having co-founders and having a co-partner has been one of the most crucial aspects of how we've been able to run our business. Because just as Hugo said about his personality traits and my personality traits, I know that if I were to run this company alone, nothing would ever happen. And if Hugo was to run alone, he'd probably end up burning it down within 2 days. So it's that sort of balance between each other has been super important.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
I agree.
I love hearing about the kind of complementary skill sets, and I feel like the kind of non-redundant complementary skill sets, super foundational element of any founding startup team. In that vein, I'm very curious how the approach has evolved over time. And when I say approach, I also mean kind of value proposition, core service. I think you mentioned the initial thesis was that we have all these relationships with these different meme and curation pages, want to distribute memes, be the king of all the memes. since then, the approach has evolved. I mean, you're definitely tapping into Gen Z culture, using innovative means of distribution. But can you just speak through the journey as to how the value proposition itself has evolved? And then also, too, curious, like what actually has stayed the same? I know marketing is always this interesting realm where it's like tactics change, but principles typically do remain the same.
Absolutely. I mean, I think in the beginning, the Instagram stuff was mainly because that was most in reach of what we could perform, and also like limited knowledge as well within the other aspects of what services we could actually offer. So I mean, if we were to do Musical.ly and TikTok campaigns just as like at the beginning of when we started, those wouldn't have been good because we wouldn't have been able to do enough research to execute them well. So initially it was definitely like social media management, because we felt like we understood that, coming from both my background as having helped our artist roster at Night, and Hugo having built the brands of his talent. And then we moved into the whole meme space, just because at that time not only was it in reach, but also quite profitable. It was a very underpriced form of marketing at that time, and that has of course since then increased a lot. But it was a new thing. Like memes were the new kids on the block, sort of, when we were in it at that time. But we also understood that that wouldn't be scalable in the future, because at the end of the day, we didn't have money to buy a bunch of accounts, or we didn't have we didn't own the networks ourselves. So in one way, we were always relying on them meeting our demands or our requirements. And it was just a lot of risk in regards to what we could control and not control. So from there on, that moved to doing stuff on YouTube, like working with YouTube influencers, Instagram influencers as well. That evolved into TikTok, doing a bunch of stuff there. And I'd say from beginning of 2020, I'd say that was when we sort of had the full spectrum of the services we wanted to offer. And since then, it's been more about perfecting the process around that. How can we make sure that we have the greatest strategy when it comes to rollout? How can we ensure that quality and communication with clients is as good as it can get? Transparency with data, etc., etc. So I think it was mainly the first year that it transformed a lot, because it just came down to us not being able to either knowing it all or not owning it all. And now we don't have to do either of those things anymore. And I think if you look at the company and the hours spent on all platforms that we now work on collectively across the company, we're probably above 20,000 hours of having spent time on TikTok, Instagram, and everything. So now everyone's sort of teaching each other, and we have a good culture where people are sharing knowledge back and forth all the time, and that has sort of also progressed the quality of the product.
And everything up until now was really like, how do we? So we were Instagram, then we were TikTok, then we in the music industry became a TikTok agency. And in my mind, that was the death of the company. You never want to be a company that's dependent on another platform or a platform. Right. So then we really tried to position the company as we're the best in the world, Gen Z. Gen Z is what we're going to do. Mm-hmm. And then when we progressed into the commercial brand space, it really went from Gen Z to online culture. Like, how do we tap into online culture? Because it can still be a 27-year-old, but they're really heavy into sports, or they're heavily into dancing or whatever. It doesn't have to be a 20-year-old. So I would say now it's a mix between best at Generation Z, but also tapping into the online culture, the pop culture of today. That's what we do now. And then we have the platforms to support that.
Right.
I love that. And it's exciting to see how the channels evolve. And I think that was a very kind of astute observation, to not get pigeonholed into one specific platform, and instead kind of refine and iterate upon the approach, the positioning. So super exciting. And it's also, amazing. It's clearly kind of translated to growth. So in that same vein too, like when you do think about the factors that have really enabled the massive scaling, like 2-3 guys to over 40 employees over the course of like less than 3 years. Pretty impressive for on the agency side. I mean, what
Thank you.
when you think about the customer and like client acquisition tactics, I mean, from what you guys are willing to share, I mean, obviously there's referrals, networking, but like, what have you guys been very intentional about that has also helped manifest into this massive growth?
That's interesting because we have never basically done marketing for Creed. We have never done client acquisition per se. So for me and Tim, we said a core value that's been with Creed from day one is that we have customer obsession. Everything we do has to be around clients and consumers and our customers. So for us, it's been really natural. It's all word of mouth. So it's all for us is like, how do we build the best client relationships? How do we help them? How do we assist them in their everyday work? And that will then result in us getting more business from their friends or their colleagues or from them as well. But
yeah,
I think we hired our first marketing person internally 1 month ago to do marketing for ourselves. We've never done anything.
Yeah. And I think like for us, I mean, the best thing we would ever be able to hear would be if someone told them, you know, you should work with Creed Media because they make my life so much easier and they deliver fantastic results. Like if that is how people talk about us, then that's where we have won exactly what we want to, you know, the feeling that we want to send out when working with us. So I think it's definitely been like our acquisition strategy in that sense has just been making sure that we are an incredibly reliable source of information and performance. That's basically as simple as that.
Yeah, no, I absolutely love that. And I even think for our listeners, I mean, two things come to mind when I hear that. One is like, it is interesting. I don't know if you ever, Tony Hsieh, RIP, founder of Zappos, in his book, something about the like happiness, but it was all around how Zappos really innovated on the actual customer experience. And he also made a similar decision that early on, he wanted to, instead of kind of reallocate what would be traditionally put towards an advertising and marketing budget towards really innovating and creating this world-class customer experience to fuel this kind of word of mouth growth. And I think similarly, in kind of a mass marketing like B2C or like artist to fans, like at that scale, it's also a similar dynamic of really trying to nurture your super fans and create this true deep fandom amongst those people that I mean, despite all the digital campaigns, it's like word of mouth and ambassadors always reign supreme. I think being able to like super serve those people and turn those people that are currently in your world into actual ambassadors. I mean, I love that.
Yeah. And I think the same goes, you know, to every aspect of relationships in general. Like if you're a songwriter that wants to make it as a songwriter, like pitching songs, whatever, it's all about the relationship you're able to form both with the artist in the room when you're there, like writing a song, or with other songwriters that bring you in that could potentially, you know, move you forward. Like as long as people are saying good things about you, and that as long as you're behaving as a fucking sensible and good person, shit will work itself out because people want good people to succeed. That's like what it comes down. And like if
from the
if
beginning,
you have good intentions, if you have good intentions, people want to help out. Here we go.
Facts. But the thing is, what we did from the beginning is that since we didn't have any money to spend on marketing, our only marketing was that people had to remember us. So in every presentation up until a year ago, we had skulls, graffiti and skulls. So it was a death mode. So people will always say like, I had a meeting with you. Oh, it's the guys that have skulls in their presentations. There was even one girl at a record label in New York that said, I only took this meeting because I liked your presentation. So that was sort of a big focus for us. Like, how do we create stuff and build a brand? So I really like the e-commerce space, like building D2C brands. But for me, it's like, how can I take that into Creed? And how do we build Creed as a brand that people want to be a part of? Everything from employees to clients. That's why we have really dope merchandise. We made chains. We made like chains for everyone with the logo on, which is dope. So how do we build Creed as a direct to consumer brand? But since we don't sell any products, it's all about brand. And that's how I think people can remember us as a company bigger than just our services.
Yeah.
Because there's so many people delivering the same services. So it's all about relationships, quality and work and brand. basically.
Yeah.
Right.
I love it. That's amazing. Random question that just came to mind. And I mean, I think like you guys are like, you guys are young entrepreneurs, which is great. I think like you got Forbes 30 under 30. Huge congrats. I think
Thank you.
like 22 and 25, just to like set the stage for our guests, given that it's not like publicized. I'm curious from a personal development perspective. And I mean, I think a lot of entrepreneurship is very much personal development. How you're able to grow yourself and manage yourself leads itself directly to how you're able to manage others, grow a company. When it comes to your own personal, I mean, I think with any sort of like career success and growth, I mean, I think people like humble people, at least, I mean, do equate part of it as like good timing, right time, right place. But I also think on the flip side, like the people that are in the right place at the right time are in a lot of places, a lot of times, creating these opportunities for themselves. Outside of that, like, or even a part of that, like, what do you think you guys have done intentionally in living your own life that has enabled you to really acquire these different skills as it pertains to understanding the marketing landscape, entrepreneurship, networking? I mean, is it mentors? Like what have you guys really leaned into with regards to your own personal development that you think has enabled this massive growth as entrepreneurs and with Creed?
It's a great question, Sam.
Yeah.
I think
question.
for sure.
I think it comes down to joint trait that both me and Hugo has, and that I think most successful entrepreneurs share as well, and many people that want to start a entrepreneurial journey as well. It's just this, active sense of curiosity in everything that you do. You want to learn from every aspect, and you're actually interested in people. I think for us, like networking has never been a situation where we're like, hey, we need to meet that person because that person can open that door. But it's more been like, I want to meet that person because I need to understand how that person thinks and how I can, learn from that in many aspects. Like every meeting we ever take, especially nowadays, comes down to like, what value can I provide and what value can I get from this interaction? And the same goes to the type of services that we have created. It comes down from a curiosity of wanting to solve problems in many senses. Like marketing essentially is just problem solving. How can you ensure that someone likes something and where it benefits them from actually using it? And yeah, that's at least part of it.
It's about always learning new stuff. But something else is that I'd say from me, I think Tim shares this as well, like really obsessed with being the best in the world at something. That like it tickles when I say that, because if you are the best one at something in the world, it's crazy. So for us, it's like, how do we become the best ones? And on the road there, how do we learn as much things as possible? Because we always speak about this. Like, let's say Creed is a $1 billion company and we never have to work again. What will we do? And the question comes down to, we would always learn new things, and we would probably do the same thing. We never do it for money. We don't do it for anything like that. It's all about meeting new people, getting like we met here. Like, it's crazy. It's thanks to Creed, which is amazing. So meet new people and learn new things and be obsessed with being the best.
And I think on the journey and like the development or evolution of the company, there's been different things that we've had to learn on the personal level, of course. Like I think one of the scariest and like weirdest things for us was, suddenly having to have responsibility over employees and, leading people and not just, having to look after yourself. Suddenly you had to teach yourself the importance of influence that you have from a leadership level. Like everything that me and Hugo does ripples down to the entire organization. Everything from if we were to, announce a random thing or a product that we didn't talk about with the other people in the company, to if we were to go around like splurge money all over the place, people would get a sense that we were either, egoistic and taking everything for ourselves, or that we just had no sense of financial responsibility. And like that would create an uncertainty in the company. So like everything we do, we know gets consequences or pros from it, depending on how we lead. So I think that's also been part of it, and understanding in that within the organization, those that we bring into the organization, it's so important that right now we always focus on culture. Like the person that we add to the team, will they benefit the culture or will they decrease or hurt the culture? And that's pretty much the only decision we make nowadays when we're bringing in new talent. It's like, okay, the competence is great, but will this actually strengthen the relationship between everyone within the company, or will it make it worse? Yeah.
Awesome. So I want to kind of pivot a little bit more to direct marketing tactics. We actually had somebody in our Discord channel for our Patreon that was running their first campaign, and he said that he had a virtual assistant go and find artists with at least or TikTok streamers with at least 100,000 followers with an engagement of at least 20%, and then was kind of like, okay, now what? So in terms of the 3 to 4 most important things to keep in mind when driving virality on TikTok, I guess, what are those things?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing is to understand that there's no one size fits all approach, and that you never want to be in a situation where you're only looking at the awareness that you create, but it's rather what type of awareness you create. So something that I always say is like, when you're building creative narratives or a context for the influencers to post in, make sure that there's layers for people to build upon. So what I mean with that, don't just go out and let everyone do, their own thing, but maybe give them some direction where everyone can sort of streamline around one narrative, but do their own twist on it. And that basically comes down to, if you look at every trend that's ever happened on TikTok and that's developed over time, it comes down to people being able to constantly add a new narrative upon the past narrative. So, for example, if we look at a super broad narrative, say, Mad at Disney, that song that became a huge TikTok success. Like, what I think was good with that song and the narrative around is like, everyone can relate in some way to, the false idea of what, life as an adult would be if you looked upon how, Disney set us up to think, what adult life and love would be. But then you grow up and you understand that it's super shit and super difficult when it comes to maintaining or just handling relationships in general. Like, everyone can add their own point of view into that. But then if you box it in and you have a song called, let's say, what the fuck can it be? The dark rug, and you feel like every content piece that you're launching has to include a dark rug, then suddenly you'll be boxed in by that thing. So people that don't have a dark rug can't get involved with it, and then can't add anything on top of it. So just making sure that when you're launching something and you're trying to create a good strategy, make sure that the narrative in itself has scalability. Second of all, that the creators that you involve actually can authentically post this narrative where it fits with their other content on their page. So, it needs to fade into everything else that they do. It must look natural, I guess. And also allowing yourself to be ready to pivot, I think, is important. And seeing that, if something starts taking off in a direction that you didn't suppose it would, go with that and allow that to naturally happen. Don't be too boxed in with your own ideas of what your trend should look like, but actually allow the platform itself to dictate where it should lead you. I think that's some important things to think about.
Bars, tight. So, you guys obviously have a large sample size in terms of what success looks like and what it doesn't look like in terms of engagement from songs and how to quantify that. But for somebody just getting into TikTok influencer marketing, what are some of the data points that they want to look out for? How do they really quantify? How did you measure success for some of those first campaigns where you didn't really have much of a catalog of campaigns behind you?
Yeah, I'd say that at the end of the day, what you want to impact the most comes down to user-generated content at all times. Like, you just want to make sure that that's what you're focusing on. If you're able to get that to a level where people are engaging and are creating, you have succeeded in the campaign that you've done. Sometimes it can be amazing to just create awareness as well. Like, don't get me wrong, in certain instances, that's all you want. But I would say, like, if you're an independent artist that's, trying to do this by yourself and don't have a major label, backing you with funding, it's definitely about like making sure that you get volume and consistency in the postings of creators on the platform that, build the marketing for you in that sense. So that can be everything from forming your own relationship. Yeah, go ahead.
But also, if you're an up-and-coming artist, I'd say one of the most undervalued things you can do right now is to build your own profile on TikTok and just create content yourself. That's where I see that you can get the most bang for your buck. It's 100% free. You can dictate your own narrative, and you can jump on trends and use your own songs on that trend.
Yeah, I think one person I love to reference in that case, and a guest you should have on the show, is Anson Zebra, who's an artist that became successful through TikTok, an amazing songwriter as well. But I mean, him having been able to, make use of his TikTok profile to A&R his own artist project is one of the smartest things I've seen. And like, I saw this the first time at the beginning of 2020, and it's still just as clever. He uses his artist profile, uploading, unreleased songs and hooks and snippets, and whatever song starts to trend, he then creates a full song around and then releases. And so far, like, every record he's ever released has over 50 million streams on Spotify. So it's like, he's a super, super cool artist and creator that still, even though he created his own profile on TikTok, has maintained his artistry in the center of his content creation as well.
You don't have to go do TikTok dances to become famous on TikTok.
No, definitely not.
Tight. Well, guys, man, really want to thank you for coming out virtually. Sam and I obviously have a little business ourselves with the podcast and figuring out how to grow it. And this all was like really inspiring for us to hear, especially as young people in the music industry and the path that you guys have blazed for yourself. So there's a lot to learn from, and I'm really excited for people to hear it. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Well. Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much, guys.
Of course, guys.
All right. Talk
Until
soon.
next time. Peace.
Yeah.
Till next time.
Man, that was a great episode. Really enjoyed hearing what they had to say. I think that their points as it pertains to just like hunger and curiosity. That curiosity, I think, is like the big key to growth. I think if you keep learning and that you're doing it from a place of authentic, passionate curiosity, like that, to me, even in my own life, that passion and passionate curiosity pushes you to grow, pushes you to seek mentorship, pushes you out of your comfort zone into new territories so you can grow as a person, as an entrepreneur, and grow success in your own life. So really loved that, and was glad we were able to have a chat around kind of the connection of personal development and entrepreneurship, because I do always believe that your level of success will never be further than your level of personal development. That's a big fact.
Dang, nice. Ooh, drop your mic. Drop that new mic you got. No, I'm kidding. Nah, but I think curiosity is, I'm not sure if people even use the word keystone next to trait, but I think it's a keystone trait. I think if you're truly curious, it keeps you humble. I think you respect the situations and the rooms that you walk into. So that's something that I try to develop and try to cultivate with everything that I do, is just to continue to stay curious in my personal life and in my work life. So like I said, a lot of inspiration and a lot of knowledge that these two have. And I'm glad that they don't have to work in an office anymore or live anywhere where there are rats and the plumbing is broken. I'm glad we heard that rags to riches. You know what I mean? They said, they literally said, get rich or not trying. So
watch out, 50. Well, on that note, really appreciate y'all for tuning in. Like we said in the beginning too, if you're a label, if you're a manager, if you're looking to level up your distribution, definitely want to encourage you to check out Vydia. They have an incredible suite of tools to help get your music on the best platforms, give you analytics, detailed revenue accounting, marketing, more. So if you haven't already, just go to vydia.com/MVP. That's vydia.com/MVP. And on that note, appreciate y'all for tuning in. We'll see you next week. Until then, we out.